But do you think these images combined together, do they represent distribution network, or do you think it is something which is beyond the distribution network? So when we say distribution network, what are we referring to? Distribution network is first of all an important aspect of business, because any business which is offering, whether it is a product or a service, needs a mechanism through which the product or a service can be delivered to the ultimate consumer. If you are a manufacturer, products will not automatically disappear from your factory and it will not automatically reach customer's house. Or obviously you need to create certain mechanisms, certain processes through which movement of goods happens. From the place of manufacturing, ultimately it should reach to the end user. Now, all these steps and mechanisms involved in this process is called a distribution network. So distribution network talks about how the product reaches from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption. So in order for the product to reach from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption, you need to have certain mechanisms in place. One of the important mechanism which is required to ensure the product reaches the ultimate customer is that you need to have a well-defined logistics system. Second, you need to have efficient channel of distribution, or in other words, you need to have efficient channel intermediaries who play a significant role in ensuring that the product reaches the end consumer. Now, even though in the image, which is put up on the slide here on your screen, you see logistic is put here as a fourth component, but technically speaking, logistics is required in between all the components which are displayed, even though the image is put only in the uh, fourth step, but that's technically not correct because you need logistics everywhere. First of all, as a manufacturer, you are converting the inputs into output. You're converting raw material or semi-raw material into a finished product, which is meant for consumption. Now, in order to make that product, you also need inputs. So where are you getting the inputs from? Because when we define distribution, we say it is from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption. But before manufacturing, you also have some steps. What are those steps? The first step is you need to figure out where are you getting the raw material from. Depending on the kind of product what you're manufacturing, certain raw materials are extracted from the nature. Certain raw materials are again manufactured using man-made resources. Then, of course, you need suppliers who play an important role in supplying the essential raw material required for you to manufacture the product. Then you need to have logistics in place. You need to have a distribution network followed by this, which comprises of your distributor, wholesaler, retailer, and then finally the product reaches the customer. If this entire cycle is not efficient, then your entire business operation takes a hit. Ultimately, your goal is not realized, whether it is maximizing profit or whether it is expansion of market share. It will not get conceived unless you don't have this being managed efficiently. Now, this entire process, what you see on your screen, is called a supply chain. So supply chain comprises of mechanisms which originate from raw material, which is the point of origin, and ultimately ends at the point of consumption. So point of origin to point of consumption is your supply chain. But when we talk about distribution, it is from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption. So supply chain, technically speaking, is a much broader term in comparison with distribution network. And one of the important component in this entire supply chain, even though I have identified two, One is logistics, and the other one is your channel intermediaries. Logistics, of course, plays a significant role. In the absence of logistics, we would not be able to procure the raw material as and when needed, and it is not possible to create time utility. The moment you make a product, it will not automatically reach the customer. You need to create a mechanism wherein you supply as per the requirement. And you cannot also say that only if requirement comes, I'll manufacture. So that is also not possible. In certain products, yes, you can use just-in-time technique, but by and large, in most of the products, you can't apply just-in-time technique. So you need to manufacture and create a buffer, for which you need warehousing and storage facilities. So that is what logistic comprises of. It comprises of two important components. One is the transportation, the other one is storage or warehousing. And logistics has a very simple definition. It is the activity of organizing the movement of equipment and material. So how you organize the movement of your material is what is defined as logistics. So for movement, you need storage and of course transportation. So these are the two backbones of the logistic system. But before we could do a little more deep diving into logistics, let's also talk about raw material. How essential is raw material? And as a business, what steps you need to undertake to ensure that your manufacturing process is uninterrupted. In order to ensure that your manufacturing is uninterrupted, you need to have an efficient supply mechanism. You need to ensure that the supply of raw material, what you are getting, is not interrupted, because if supply gets interrupted, the manufacturing takes a hit, and if manufacturing gets affected, it will have implication on the entire business process. Unless you don't manufacture, you'll not be able to sell. Unless you don't sell, you'll not be able to create revenue. And unless you don't have revenue, you'll not be able to manage your routine expenses. And ultimately, you have to end up taking loans. So all sorts of issues will arise only because your supply is being disrupted. And we did see in 2021 what happened to the automotive sector. Automotive sector had issues with semiconductors and chip shortage. As a result of this, the entire global community of automobile sector got affected. Not just India, but entire world had a major issue. As a result of this, most of the car makers had to cut down on their production, even though they had orders, even though they had demand. But unfortunately, they were not unable to meet the demand, and it had an impact on customers, because the customers, somebody who had to wait for a month, had to wait for another 5-6 months extra because of shortage. And this dented the entire growth and prospects of the entire industry. So it's not just one or two car makers who got affected, but it is the entire industry which was severely hit by shortage. So the solution is something what you have to figure out as a business. In an event like this, where there is inadequate supply of raw material, what are your backup plans? What are your alternative strategies? Generally, most of the manufacturers ensure that they have a pool of suppliers. They're not dependent only on one or two suppliers. They have a network of suppliers. And this network of suppliers is built on the basis of their efficiency to supply, and most importantly on cost, because cost play an important role in the manufacturing process. One of the important goal of manufacturing itself is to keep the costs at an optimum level. You need to ensure that the cost of manufacturing is kept low, because the moment you ensure that your cost of manufacturing is low, it automatically creates a competitive advantage, which means if you are able to manufacture a product at a much lower price than your competitors, then you will have an advantage over them, because you can keep your pricing low. And when the pricing is low, it will automatically boost your sales, and you would be able to generate a revenue which is far more superior than your competitors. So cost can be your biggest advantage for any company. And in order to achieve this cost advantage, you need to figure out suppliers who are able to give you the raw material at the best price. and you need to procure it from wherever it is available at the cheapest price. You should not get confined to only a specific geographical boundary. So you may have to figure out in the entire world where the product is available very cheap. So that's how most of the manufacturers use the strategy of procuring raw materials without any interruption and also at best possible price. And as I mentioned, this will definitely help them to achieve cost advantage. Now, coming to logistics, logistics also play an important role because you need to figure out a mode of transport which is very efficient, not just in terms of speed, but also in terms of cost. So you need to figure out what are the alternative ways through which you can get those goods transported, get that raw material transported to your premises. So in the context of international business, as you're all aware that most of the trade happens through sea routes. But apart from sea route, are there any other alternatives? Of course, if you want the speed, then obviously you have air transport. But the only issue with the air transport is that it might not offer you the kind of cost what you're looking for. Obviously, it's quite expensive. And in some cases, air transport is not suitable for carrying all forms and kinds of resources and machineries. Some of the heavy machineries, definitely air transport is not advisable or not suitable. In that case, you have to rely on sea route, right? So you need to choose your transportation partners who are quite efficient, who have expertise in the area of shipping, who can get the raw material delivered, goods delivered efficiently at a very affordable price. But sometimes, despite of doing all this, you may still end up landing in trouble on account of various reasons that are far beyond your control. Right? Something which happened recently in 2021. I'm sure you are able to recall the event, Suez Canal obstruction. A ship got stuck there, right? Because the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, it affected the entire shipping system, and as a result of this, uh, the cargo, the materials did not reach on time. It had an impact on the entire global supply chain. One ship getting stuck, look at the kind of implications it has. So sometimes things can go beyond your control. So that is where you also have to ensure that you always have sufficient raw materials procured and stocked up so that you can use the buffer stock when things go beyond the control. And at times you have to also consider of doing in-house manufacturing of the raw material which you are planning, which you are planning to procure and which is needed in your operations. One company which did think of out of box in this chip shortage issue was Tesla. Tesla decided that it will set up its own manufacturing facility to manufacture chip and other semiconductor required for automobile, right? That will solve all the problem. When you don't have to be dependent, then obviously any kind of disruption will not affect your manufacturing process. So a lot of automobile companies after this global shortage have decided to set up their own manufacturing facility. So at times you need to have a kind of a mechanism which would serve as a backup plan in case if things don't go as per what you have planned. So some of the alternative options available, something which I did identify is that you need to have a network of suppliers. You should not be reliant or dependent on one or two or few suppliers. Second, you should also consider what are the best ways of procuring this raw material. If this can be manufactured in the same facility, then you should better do it. So you should always do this decision making in terms of cost and benefit analysis. So this is about procuring raw material. Once the goods are manufactured, yes, of course, logistics do play an important role. But what also comes into picture is the distribution channel partners. So you have to decide whether you want to use offline channel partners or whether you want to go online and use online channel partners or whether you want to go D2C or in other words B2C, directly to consumer. You don't have intermediary at all in the supply chain, in the distribution network. So this decision has to be taken by considering various factors. You can't be judgmental in saying that okay, we should go for offline or we should go for online. You have to keep in mind a host of factors. There are companies who did start with online, and they did achieve success initially, but ultimately they had to change their channel partner choice. One of the reasons why Xiaomi was able to quickly penetrate into Indian market, because initially when they launched their products in India, they had exclusive deals with all marketplace providers like Amazon, Flipkart, and because of their expertise, their wider reach, Xiaomi was able to quickly capture the market. But at one point in time, Xiaomi also did realize that mere having online distribution network would not help, especially in a country like India, which is made up of more of villages and small towns. So you need a solid offline mode of distribution also. But Xiaomi's competitors did the other way around. I'm talking about Oppo and Vivo. Oppo and Vivo did the other way around. They their focus was more on offline channels than online, and it did pay off because Vivo and Oppo were able to penetrate even in the smallest of the small town. You go to any small town, even for now, you will find Oppo and Vivo's board outside the mobile phone shops. And this is something which Xiaomi did realize, that if it wants to grow and become truly a major brand with a bigger market share, it has to go offline. And Xiaomi did that. And now it is one of the India's leading mobile phone companies with highest market share. So you need to do a lot of critical analysis before jumping to a conclusion that which mode you want to follow, whether it is offline, online, or a combination of both. Right? Something that happened with Lenskart also. Eventually, Lenskart was more of an online retailer format is what they started with, but they realized that the product what they're selling in itself is not suitable for an online platform, because uh, glasses or spectacles is something which you want to try and see how it looks on you, you want to feel and then buy. I mean, you might have an artificial intelligence uh, and other machine learning processes in place which would actually help the user to see virtually how they look when they wear that specs, but still this concept was not suitable for Indian markets. And eventually, Lenskart also had to decide that it will also go with offline channels. And it did use the franchisee model, not the wholesaler, distributor, or retailer model, directly franchisee model, in which a retailer will market the products in return for royalty. So that's a franchisee model. But again, it's an offline, but yes, it does not involve all your channel intermediaries. It's like business to retailer, from retailer to customers. So hardly there is one franchisee retailer who is involved in the entire process. So you need to do a scrutiny of all this before deciding what mode you want, right? So that's what I wanted to highlight. I wanted you to know that what's the difference between a distribution channel and a supply chain network. Now, what you see on the screen is the diagram of a supply chain, right? Because in supply chain, you have both suppliers network plus the distribution channel combined together with the logistics. Now, what are some of the important functions performed by the intermediaries, be it Amazon or be it a wholesaler or a retailer? What kind of benefits do they offer to the manufacturer? So the answer to this question is a host of benefits, some of which are being put up on this slide. The first one being facilitating demand, because this is an important area where intermediaries can help, right? So don't be under the impression that only the manufacturer does facilitate the demand. In order to increase the demand, manufacturers do use tactics like promotion, advertisement, all this. But ultimately, it is the retailer who also has a significant role in pushing for the product, right? And that's what we get to see whenever we visit these departmental stores or supermarkets or hypermarkets, right? We go there with an intention of buying a certain product and certain quantity, but most of the times we are not under the control of our own decision. Let's say I go to a supermarket and it is very clear cut instruction is being given to me that I should go there and buy 1 liter of Safola oil, cooking oil, and come back. But I go there and I see there that some other promotional scheme is going on. The retailer is saying that, okay, you buy Fortune cooking oil and you get 1 kg sugar free. And this is a limited period offer. So by looking at that offer, my decision to buy Saffola is gone. Now I end up buying 2 liters of Fortune cooking oil because I'm getting 2 kilos of sugar free with that. So first of all, I'm consuming more than what I am doing on a regular basis just because there is an offer there. So who's actually facilitating this demand? Is it the manufacturer or is it the retailer? So these are some of the point of sale promotional schemes. Promotions can be done by the manufacturer also. Promotional schemes can also be offered by the retailer at the point of sale. So in this way, your channel intermediaries like the retailers can offer a lot of benefits. Ultimately, they are the one who are pushing your product. So they also play an important role. Whether it's an online retailer or offline retailer, does not matter. But anyways, they are the intermediaries who can help you in this. Assumption of risk. What is the risk? The risk of holding inventory. Because when you're piling up a lot of stock, right, that in itself is a risk because you don't know what is about to come. Imagine you have piled up stock and there's a lockdown, and ultimately the stock what you have procured, there's an expiry date to it. So ultimately, you are the one who will suffer all the loss. It's not the manufacturer. Manufacturer has got rid of his stock. He has given it to the distributor. Distributor has given it to the wholesaler. Finally, the stock has come in your store and it is lying there. So ultimately, you have to bear the risk of holding the inventory. There are many risks. One of the risks is what I have mentioned. And some of the other risks include technological advancements. Imagine your product, you're offering a product, and unfortunately, within few days, there's one more new model which has come. So now you have to somehow get rid of the old model by giving a lot of discount. Sometimes you have to sell it below your cost price, and ultimately you will end up suffering huge amount of losses. But manufacturer is safe. It is a retailer who has to bear the brunt. So these channel intermediaries also assume the risk of holding the inventory. And financing, this is something which we as a consumer we always like, because we want to buy a lot of things, but the only reason is that we don't do it is because we have financial constraints. We have a budget, and in that budget we don't have sufficient resources to buy what we are looking for. And that is where all your retailers, whether they are online or offline, offer you credit facilities by collaborating with various financial institutions. So these financial institutions did include banks, but now in this era, you have a new set of financing companies, which we generally call them as fintech companies. So in a matter of clicking few buttons on your mobile phone, few taps, the loan is processed. And online platforms like Flipkart, Amazon, and so many others are also offering you an option wherein you have to buy now and pay later as per your convenience. And if you buy cash, you don't get such discount. But when you opt for buy now, pay later, you get additional discount. Look at the way these players are luring the customers, right? So in the absence of financing option, definitely demand would be hit, consumption will go down. So all these financing schemes ultimately are given by the intermediaries, which is actually helping the business, the manufacturer. Now, some of the other things what these intermediaries do is also highlighted here: buying, assembling, grading, packaging, selling. And one of the common concept in the context of buying, selling, grading, and packaging is white labels, or also known as private labels. So you go to a supermarket, you get a you get groceries and certain products which are already packed, and you will have the name of the seller on it, not the name of the manufacturer. You go to Reliance, you get to buy Reliance sugar. Reliance technically does not make any sugar at all. They're not the manufacturer, they're only the seller. So only their brand label is put. And they have done the packaging, and they also do grading, which is the first grade A, grade B product. So that is also done by them. So manufacturer gets that benefit also from the intermediaries, that they are doing the labeling, branding, grading, assembling, and they are selling it. So that is also a benefit which the manufacturer can derive by having an efficient distribution channel partners. Supply of market information that comes from retailers are very important, because out of all the intermediaries, what I was referring to you, it is the retailer who actually communicates with the customer. So retailer is the face, and retailer is the one who interacts with the customer. So customer gives a lot of feedback, a lot of insights, and this information is also passed on to the manufacturer by the intermediaries. So these are the ways in which intermediaries play an important role in the overall success of the business. So this area in itself cannot be neglected and ignored, because this supply chain and distribution can be a reason for an organization's success or failure. Right?